Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious. You can join us in broadening our minds on the Nameless Debates Discord via the link below and even feature here yourself, if you've got what it takes.
No.
If we're not doing the last topic, I have a point for it.
What?
If we end up scrapping the last topic, I do have a point for it.
Scrapping it. Even if I do argue against myself, I'm gonna talk. I didn't fucking write notes to not fucking say them.
Fair.
Okay, so how about for the last topic, we make it a discussion and people can chime in. And then it doesn't have to be timed, but it's going to be a 20-minute discussion. And at 20 minutes, I'm going to call time because I really have to go after 20 minutes.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
That lets me expand it into more provocative territory.
I have a point. Can I open?
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so I think that two of the main things that we have gotten from modern medicine, one of them is the genetic testing of fetuses, and one of them is abortion. And through the combination of these two things, we'll often terminate a pregnancy if I don't want to say the child is defective, but if there are like serious issues that could lead to like poor development of that child, then we will just cancel it altogether. Wow, let's touch on cancel culture. Yeah. So the child will be cancelled, and then that will actually ensure that person with the weaker genetics never reproduces, thus strengthening the gene pool.
I mean, doesn't that take for granted the proposition though? So what? I basically have that. That's one of my points. So I'm going to restate it. On its face, the proposition seems almost undeniable, considering that no Western country that I know of has an established eugenics program. Though we do offer certain types of testing, for instance, the Harmony test, which checks for common chromosomal abnormalities such as Down syndrome. Of course, it's still up to the parent if they want to continue or terminate the pregnancy. And if that child does grow up, they're totally entitled to breed, which straightforwardly perpetuates defective genes. Though Down specifically is not hereditary, many other such conditions are. More broadly, if we accept that there are certain features which contribute to the fitness of the organism that are genetic and hereditary, then the inverse must also be true, that there are certain genetically determined characteristics that detriment the fitness or the capacity to survive of a life form, and the advances of modern medicine, especially in the last 200 years, have significantly aided in the survival of organisms, mostly humans, but even other animals, that would otherwise have died. Because we have sophisticated ways of basically bringing you back to life from a state that, if not for this technology, you would be dead.
Nano here and sort of be like, well, yes, but then also modern medicine does have the provisions for you to like not continue with like as he said, like a baby that does have defective genes. It's so you support the proposition, right? That modern medicine does support the persistence of bad genes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I am an example. I have a heart condition. Now, that heart condition could technically have killed me randomly at some point in my life, but I mean, it was detected, and I have an ICD in my chest, right? So that won't happen now. But the thing is that I would pass on that heart condition to my children, right? And that wouldn't happen if I died.
Yes, but then what I want to ask is like, is that medicine's fault, or is that more like an ethics question? I mean, your parents could have chosen to not give you the ICD. No, hang on. The parents could have chosen to not give you the ICD. Parents can choose to abort. But let me finish. Parents can shush. Oh my God, let me make my point. Like, parents can make the choice to like abort babies that have Down syndrome, but they don't do it. Like generally.
80% of the people who use the Harmony test, who discover that they have a baby with a chromosomal abnormality, terminate the pregnancy.
Okay, so if they do terminate the pregnancy, then how is the modern medicine
Oh, because
persisting.
I'm an example of how, because my condition isn't the sort of thing you can detect with a chromosomal test, which is kind of, we only have like a limited range of testing basically. We don't understand much about genetics, so we can only test for certain things. My condition isn't one of the things that you can test the genes of the baby for, and my condition is an example of, so like, first of all, my parents didn't put the ICD in, that happened like a year or two ago. But the point is that if I were to die randomly before I reproduced, that would like be nature's way of ensuring that the defect in my genes did not proliferate. Whereas modern medicine has come along and put an electronic device in my chest that will shock my heart if it's not working properly.
I mean, you can also not have children, but
I could, but I don't. So what do you got? You know.
I mean. So you want to have children, knowing the fact that you have like a genetic condition.
Yeah.
You want to have children knowing that, but then you argue that it's medicine's fault, that it's bad, that it's bad genes.
When did you say that out of my mouth? It's medicine's fault.
Well, yeah, you did say that we don't know much about genetics. I think obviously we would know a lot less without modern medicine, but we know enough to develop a technology called CRISPR, which can be used to edit genes, which can be used to, stamp these things out at the root.
I'm aware.
We cannot hear you, Rich.
So
Grace yelling in the background.
So yeah, we have the example of there are people that have conditions that modern science has not detected, and obviously that's not going to do anything. But as modern science increases, we're on this upward trend towards understanding more.
Yeah,
we're able
Okay, can you hear me now?
We're actually developing the capability to edit these things to prevent
Definitely. But modern
Okay,
medicine
I would like to ask a question to clarify the premise here. Okay, so is the proposition just that modern medicine has enabled there to be cases in which someone with a genetic default that could defect that would have died otherwise to live, or is it that like
I'll make a stronger case. The modern medicine, as it stands today, has perpetuated many genetic lines that in nature would have petered out for good reasons.
Okay, sure, but like, are we just saying that this is something that happens with modern medicine, or are we saying this is like this is the common?
It's an extremely prominent effect of modern medicine.
Right, but like, are we saying that like the majority of interactions with medicine are such that they're addressing these kinds of defaults, or are we just saying this is one thing that happens from the result of medicine?
One thing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Well, like I said,
I don't think you. I agree with that. You can't really contest that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said the proposition seems like undeniable, really, because all you have to do is accept that medicine is good for helping people who have a worse chance of survive sickness and shit, and bam, you've got proliferation of bad genes.
That's not what the proposition says. Though. The proposition says that modern medicine supports the persistence of bad genes in the human gene, thus exposing the human to a weak.
Currently,
there are countervailing aspects of modern medicine that do not
come in technology.
Wait. I think you guys are missing the point here, right? So just because there are other things that people can do that to have the condition still peter out doesn't mean that modern medicine doesn't contribute to it, right? We're just looking at whether or not modern medicine itself, by itself, with nothing else involved, contributes to these things.
To be clear, I think what Hyde's saying is that modern medicine that's up and coming, which is like CRISPR, right? That's not something we currently know how to use properly. Like I said, we don't understand a lot about genetics, but sure, in the next 100 years, the state of modern medicine might change so that it no longer does this, but currently it does.
I was also
I think it does both.
Because it's kind of like, I felt like I was kind of missing the point. Like, it was kind of like, it's not whether or not there are other things we can do to not pass on the genetic conditions, so whether or not medicine does so.
I would interpret the proposition as talking about the whole of looking at all the facts of whether modern medicine as a practice supports, the weakening of the gene pool or non-weakening of the gene pool. Otherwise, if you're talking about are there elements of modern medicine that do lead to the genes that would not otherwise naturally be selected for maintaining, then that seems like a vacuous statement. But if you take it in this other way, and it is syntactically ambiguous, so I guess you could argue that you should take it either way. then if you take it the more interesting way, then I think you do have to weigh the relative benefits of modern medicine towards the gene pool, and then you have to weigh the deleterious effects that it could possibly have on the gene pool.
Ava, I
I
feel like
think
that's
that it
kind of
does
missing the
both.
point.
Yeah, I mean, I think your interpretation is probably more interesting, but it's not exactly what it's asking in my mind.
I think it's syntactically ambiguous. It could be talking about either one, or no, semantically ambiguous. It could be talking about either one. I think one's a fairly vacuous statement. I think that the other
I don't think it is ambiguous. I think that the context of the statement is ambiguous, such that you can make an argument about what you can conjecture context, right? And say it's ambiguous because it isn't the context, since I have another context, isn't clear. But in my mind, there's a native context to the question, which is just, is it true or false?
Well, take this analog. Modern medicine supports the pain of children receiving shots or something like that. Like, is there a bit of pain in the shot? Yeah, but the thought is that pain will be overall pervaded by preventing illnesses.
That seems like an unfair way to frame it, because it's not the pain of children receiving shots. It would be something like, does modern medicine, or specifically, do vaccines cause children more harm than they do good, right? That's what you're essentially evaluating in your mind. That's just the parallel to your example.
No, I'm trying to sub in this language so that we can look at the
example
exact
that you made of the other one, right, was whether or not you would have to weigh. You said you would have to weigh up the deleterious. I'm not actually familiar with that word. What does that mean?
bad or harmful.
Okay, yeah, those effects with what it provides. So the parallel example would be the same. I mean, the same structure.
I think it's all of the above, right? Like, I think that there are some aspects of modern medicine that do contribute to the weakening of the gene pool, and there are other aspects that have the opposite effect. Like, you need to look at specific you need to look at, like, you can't just say medicine as like you can say yes, medicine as a whole does have some aspects that contribute to the weakening of the gene pool, but that's only half the picture.
I would also posit that since this is construed as a discussion as opposed to a debate, if we think that the proposition, one phrasing of this proposition is vacuous, and is there anyone that doesn't think that if we interpret, I think it's semantically ambiguous, but I think that this
okay, how about this? I'll cede you that it's vacuous. In the way that there's a native context, that interpretation is vacuous, as it's obviously true. I'll agree.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, does anyone disagree with that? Because if anyone does disagree with that, then feel free to have that conversation. If not, I propose that we adopt the more...
I actually, when I
trivial?
Say what?
What's the difference between something being vacuous and it being trivial?
Nothing.
Wait, before you start that, I'm just gonna say that, like, you guys can continue, but I really have to go and do laundry because I don't have clean clothes. So I'm gonna leave. But thank you for coming to the event.
Bye.
I'm gonna go take a shower.
Bye.
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 Yeah, no, I'm essentially using vacuous as a synonym for trivial in this sense, like having no real substantive content to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So if we look at this, and modern medicine supports the persistence of bad genes in the human gene pool, like if we look at the totality of whether this practice supports this, like we look at the end effects of it, I think that then that's we've talked about how there is on one side modern medicine keeps people alive. I think that maybe we can talk about what is considered a weakened genetic makeup. Is that a genetic makeup that is just less likely to be successful and under natural selection pressures, or is that some sort of like normative statement saying, hey, these genes are weaker? Because I think that you take one person's genes in one environment, they may not necessarily be weaker in another environment. So talking about whether genes are genetic makeups are weaker or not than the others, there might be some discussion ground there. But I think that the conversation,
obviously, it's like to our normal environment, like the environment most of us live in, right? Like, so I kind of agree with you that like genetics is kind of like the real life version of like, it's not a bug, it's a feature, right? Like, you basically have a bunch of random things happen, and then like things that are good enough to stick around, right? But like when we see like a defect, clearly we mean things that are not operating like the way that or like that we expect them.
Yeah, and so I think we would need some sort of data as to like how many of these people that might have Down syndrome or that have been aborted or something like that, or how many of these conditions are able to be successfully treated with like CRISPR technology, um, relative to the the weakened genetic makeup of people living. Although I would argue that people generally living, the longer you live, the more likely you're able to procreate and contribute to genetic diversity, which is usually a beneficial thing for resilience to environments.
Can I make a comment?
Yes and no. Sure.
So, first of all, like natural select. If you want to see like a significant change in the gene pool due to natural selection, you're gonna have to wait for thousands of years. And so this idea that that medicine is gonna weaken the human genome is assuming that we're gonna have modern medicine over geologic timescales. But then at the same time, with genetic engineering, our actual future, if medicine persists, is that the human genome will just become a product of technology that can be arbitrarily edited. And so we will go from being animals subject to natural selection to having every aspect of our biology being some sort of information technology. And so, like modern medicine is, rather than weakening our gene pool, is going to sort of liberate us from Darwinian natural selection. And also, like this idea of good versus bad genes. Like from the perspective of evolution, a good gene is just something that that results in pregnancy and then the baby surviving. I mean, like probably like the kind of adaptation I would see is men would start having like an adaptation where their penises break condoms. That's the kind of thing you'd expect Mother Nature to do to us. Is like the biggest thing that's preventing us from reproducing right now is contraception.
Or it just makes it so that guys don't want to wear condoms. Oh wait.
Well, I mean, like you could have something where the penis like secretes some sort of oily substance that causes condoms to break.
I think Instinct's point earlier, though, was something along the lines of, yeah, CRISPR is going to allow us these types of gene editing or ability to absolve ourselves of the conditions that would weaken our gene pool. But right now, modern medicine, not future medicine, that's not one scalable and is only, even though it's already being done, it's only being done in like clinical studies or possibly for the very rich that are able to do whatever the fuck they want. So
but the thing is, evolution acts too slowly for this to be an issue. So this won't become a problem until we have had medicine for thousands of years.
In before coronavirus fucking mutates and wipes us out.
Yeah, I mean,
is the concern that we're going to have freely available medical care for over the next several eons, or what?
I mean, I think that's another thing that, interestingly, when we talked earlier about the first, there's all these other different threats to us actually being able to make it to that point.
I mean, like we can, it can still be the case that it takes a long time for natural selection to occur, and it also be the case that modern medicine is still contributing to the weakening of the gene pool, right? Like the weakening of the gene pool can be as simple as a genetic defect passing on.
And it could be something that might be like perceptible eons from now, but if we take some sort of gradation of, say, it takes 4 millennia for these changes, just an arbitrary number, that doesn't mean that day 5 that this 4 millennia long process has not already started, and that this degradation has not already been initiated. And point A versus point A1, by the time you get to point Z 4 millennia from now, that doesn't mean that point A1, which is after point A, doesn't already have this degradation present.
Like I will admit that the invention of insulin being used to treat diabetes is actually invented insulin-dependent diabetics, and so before we were able to manufacture penicillin, so before we were able to manufacture insulin like that, like if you became insulin-dependent diabetic, you'd just be dead. There was just no such like thing as insulin-dependent diabetics. You'd just be a diabetic who doesn't need insulin or dead, right? And so you do see people being alive who wouldn't have otherwise been alive. So, like, I guess that can be a good or a bad thing, depending on what your opinion is, I suppose.
I will bring forward, though, that, a lot of the complications that we do see in genes occur more later in life after reproduction has already been done. So as much as they do kind of spread, let's just say like a genome that is not the best, they will still be spread because in a natural setting, people usually do reproduce at a very young age. Around, let's say around 20, let's say it that way. But most problems happen after 20, or like around 30, 40s. So a lot of the things that we think about when we think about bad genes aren't really, not that they're not relevant, but it's just that in a natural setting they will still be able to be passed because they show up later in life, if that makes sense.
Another thing I kind of wanted to point out is like natural selection is not your friend. Natural selection doesn't care about your happiness or how fulfilling your life is. Like imagine if like for example, the poorer you are, the less money you have access to, the less access to education you have, the less access to healthcare you have, the more likely you are to accidentally get someone pregnant. And so natural selection might like you to be poor. I don't know if there's any genes that like correlated with not having wealth, but like if there are, natural selection might favor it. Like natural selection wants you to make babies and raise those babies and have those babies make babies. It doesn't care if you're enjoying your life.
Unless, of course, enjoying your life is prerequisite for reproduction, in which case it directly does.
Actually, though, there's an inverse relationship there. There's lots of studies to show that if you live in a poverty-stricken country and, there's not a lot that you can do about that kind of thing, that your quality of life isn't great, you tend to have a high reproductive rate. Because you take solace in your family.
Yeah.
Mm.
And also, your kids die when they're too.
The reason that we get old and we die is because there's no selective pressure favoring longevity like that, and so like basically like we live long enough to be parents to raise our kids, and we might even live long enough to help our kids raise their kids to be good grandparents. But it's almost as if an old person is just some sort of like leftover body that is done reproducing but hasn't died yet.
Old people are just human raisins.
Fact.
And so I would like to see genetic engineering being used not to increase our probability of survival, and reproduction. I'd like to see genetic engineering being used to improve the quality of our lives in ways that natural selection doesn't necessarily care about.
Such as triggering a kill switch on your 40th birthday, thus solving the problem of old people not reproducing.
Triggering what?
I was memeing. Triggering on your 40th birthday.
Yeah, I'd actually be interested because my understanding is that less educated populations, which are differentially more likely to be of higher socioeconomic classes, eventually are choosing to have less. So I actually would wonder if there would be a correlation between poor people and having more kids and the propagation of genes that way. I'd also say that we have actually identified the genes that are correlated with higher wealth. They're the orange ones.
So there might turn out to be a gene that's associated with being bad at managing your money, and it turns out to be the most successful mutation in human history.
that said, boys, this is good discussion. I think that we actually passed the 20-minute mark. That
Yeah, but Ava's gone, so that's the reason she's at the 20-minute mark.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna duck out though. But yeah, great event. I'll catch you guys later.
Yeah.
So with respect to the gene that would make people bad at managing their money, wouldn't that have some sort of ceiling on how effective it could be? Because if everyone is bad at managing their money, then like wouldn't I don't know, wouldn't money kind of start to fall apart and stuff?
Yeah, it's a bell curve,
Look
right?
at,
Like
and
you have
look at
to
the
be
world we see today.
you have to be bad at managing money, but not terrible because you still need to survive.
I feel like
Oh
he was
no, I was
making a
gonna
joke.
say
I'm pretty sure he was making a joke.
I don't even know if I'm joking.
Well,
I do
that's
find
not a
it
good
funny.
sign.
I was gonna say something like there would have to be some people that are still around that are good at have stuff working or whatever. Like how, you know, with the for lack of a better example, I guess, like the predator prey curves or whatever. Like, you know, you'd say, oh, okay, well the genes that help you know, you like hunt your prey the best are gonna, you know, stick around the most. And it's like, okay, well then, you know, everyone gets those genes, then they hunt their prey to extinction, and then they all die.
Well, that actually occurs in nature.
Well, like in nature, it's like the population is sort of capped by the. So like they never go to, it never comes to the extent. Well, it usually doesn't go to the extent such that they completely wipe out the prey. Or at least not the ones that are still around do that.
I remember there was actually this right wing theory saying that liberals are R strategists while conservatives are K strategists. And what R and K strategists is it's a concept in evolutionary biology where example of like an R strategist would be something like an insect or like a rabbit or something where they have lots of low quality offspring that are likely to die, but they just start spamming offspring in the hopes that some of them will be successful. A K strategist would be something more like a human or an elephant that have long gestation periods. It takes a long time for their offspring to grow up, but they put high parental investment into their offspring
Wait,
with long
so are liberals
lifespans,
supposed to be
right?
the R one? Are liberals
And
supposed
so
to
yeah,
be R?
liberals were like according to this conservative theory, liberals are R strategists who have babies as much as possible, as frequently as possible, so the state can support them, and then they mostly die due to being in poverty and due to having liberal parents who are unable to take care of them. But then conservatives are K strategists who only have like one or two kids, but they put a lot of parental investment in them, and they're more likely to survive, and they become upstanding members of society. And it was basically a way of sort of painting Democrats with a little bit of certain connotation, saying that like, oh, these are the people who have lots of kids who are unlikely to
I'm
survive
just wondering if
because
that's like
they have a different
empirically
reproductive strategy, and we're going to
backed
get overrun
right?
by them.
I'm just trying to
Right.
figure out if that's like empirically. Okay, wait, first of all, they couldn't be over because the whole strategy would die. Secondly, I don't know if that's even like empirically like the case, because like wouldn't you expect like the more like sort of religious conservative families to be having more kids than the people that are, you know, not even sure if they want to get married and stuff like that, and you know are waiting longer, and that seems like a pretty poor thing. Like I mean, I know it's a poor thing, but like it just seems
problem
like
with
not
this
empirically.
is like that's not even how people behave.
Oh, I
Like
mean, yeah,
Democrats
like in
actually
general.
care about their kids.
Oh yeah, sure. I just meant like from the standpoint of like having more kids versus having less kids. Is I would expect the people that lean more conservative to have more kids, liberals. Or
Yeah, that is another thing. Haven't you seen the Duggars? Like what's the political affiliation of the Duggars? Would you imagine if you're familiar with
I have
them?
no idea who they are.
Okay, the Duggars are this family that basically their goal in life is to have as many children as possible. And so there is this ultra religious woman, like super Christian, who believes it is her goal in life to have as many babies as humanly possible. And she has like 10 or 15 kids. And she's basically turning one out one every 9 months. one every 9 months, and this married couple actually work quite well together, where they basically have a whole system worked out where they buy things in bulk. They get their children to help get the older children to help build a house and everything. And it's almost as if they had so many children, their family is turned into an economy. Like their family is turned into an economic force geared towards producing children.
Micronation.
Yeah,
Child factory.
yeah. This woman's uterus has burst on micronation, and
She's the
guess
queen
what?
bee, bro.
Guess what? They love Jesus. They're conservative.
She's the queen bee.
Oh my god! Like I'm afraid like the Duggars are gonna like seriously take over the world over the course of the next 200 years. Because their kids also say that their goal in life is to have as many children as possible.
They should separate themselves from society like the Amish.
Oh my god.
They can become the hyper reproduction Amish.
The Amish have gone airborne. But guess what? This isn't some sort of genetic thing. I think it was because that they chose to do this. It was a deliberate decision on their part, influenced by culture, right? And so like no, like I don't think that you're gonna see like they aren't reproducing faster because of their genes. They're reproducing faster because some man and some woman got some sort of crazy idea in their head. Although there were allegations of sexual abuse happening in that family, but let's not talk about that. Even though I just brought it up, I do find that family somewhat fascinating.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Isn't it, basic instinct to reproduce is possible?
What's that?
Isn't it basic instinct to reproduce as much as possible?
Is what to produce as much as possible? I mean that's sort of the only thing natural selection really cares about. If that's what you're asking.
Right. So then, why did you say?
I mean,
it was an
even
idea?
if it is an instinct, it doesn't seem to be a very strong one because most people peter out after about 2 kids.
Well, the thing is that contraception didn't exist for an evolutionarily significant amount of time, and so the reason that you see people like choosing to have a certain number of kids, like basically like this is like the last
Oh, I'm
100
just saying
100
that
to
the
200
fact that they
years
choose
is the
it.
first time in history that people have
Yeah.
ever used family
I'm just-
planning or had as many
I'm
kids
just
as they
saying the
decided to
fact
have.
that they choose at all instead of just trying to pump them out kind of implies that like whatever instinct would drive people to have more kids isn't very strong.
Yeah. So the instinct is to want to have sex. The instinct isn't so much to deliberately become pregnant. This idea of pregnancy and sex being separate things is a very recent concept.
Oh, okay.
There are definitely
And
hormones
so
that
contraception has not been around for long enough for natural selection to influence human behavior.
there are hormones that cause humans to want to reproduce, not just have sex. So I'm not sure it's just wanting to have sex.
You mean like pair bonding?
Yeah.
Because the knowledge that sex makes babies isn't hardwired into us. Like I've heard like I think my mom was telling me stories about how like my great grandparents, they didn't know where babies came from until their fifth kid. Like they had to figure this out. Like
What do you mean?
imagine Imagine like a really sexually repressed couple where like no one had a sex talk with them. Like imagine like a 25-year-old who has never had the sex talk and no one told him about any of this. And he's like, why does my wife keep on like getting pregnant? I have no idea why. Because he would have sex with his wife like at night with their clothes on and never speak a word of it to a soul, even to her, and never mention it. And under those cultural conditions, they have no idea where babies come from. Like this is the kind of bullshit that we've had to deal with in our evolutionary history. Like you're imagining that our ancestors knew what they were doing.
In sync.
Wait, were they a part of a religious belief?
They were, I don't know, in Texas. They were in Texas 150 years ago, so you can kind of figure out the kind of mentality.
You know where babies come from, though, right?
What's that?
Between the ribs and the tailbone, right? That's from baby.
The harib.
Everyone knows that, dude. The shield and the harib.
Well, a woman gets pregnant when she kisses lying down, right?
So wait,
Others from eating too much fruit.
And it doesn't work if you're standing up.
If the woman's in space, how do you determine if she's lying down?
I didn't catch that.
How many people have gotten pregnant in space, though? Let's be real.
No, but that doesn't matter. Like, so if the woman's in space and like you kiss her, how do you know if she's lying down?
She can't be lying down. She's in space. She can't get pregnant in space.
Oh, okay.
So, like, how many people have gotten pregnant in space? Zero.
Now.
Wait, so is this like? I'm confused. What type of questions are we asking now?
This is like a major tangent zone.
Yeah.
Whatever you want, my dude.
Like what I'm trying to say is that natural selection sort of like controls our desires in a lot of ways. It's not so much going to control complex behavior.
Well, the product.
I'm gonna have to disagree on this. Natural selection is not some entity that happens to us. It's more like it doesn't happen. Natural selection doesn't happen to individuals. It happens to species.
Yeah, that's true. It happens to populations. Yes.
Yeah, the product of natural selection controls our behaviors or informs our decisions. It's not natural.
Natural instincts is what affects individuals, not natural selection.
Yeah, but
I would think those instincts are products. So if you'd like me to become more rigorous in the way I'm saying this, then yeah.
I think natural selection actually is the outcome, right? Like, it's not like natural selection isn't like the process that happens. It's like the outcome. The outcome.
Okay, so it's a consequence of like natural selection is more of a mathematical statement, right? It's more of a consequence of genes having some sort of statistically significant impact on your likelihood to reproduce over time, right?
Yeah, it's the consequences of like just laws of biology.
But the thing is even biologists are going to anthropomorphize evolution as sort of a way of speaking using fewer words. And the assumption is that everyone in the room knows that natural selection isn't some dude like some fairy that comes along at night and waves its wand and gives you genetic mutations or whatever. Like I do realize that natural selection doesn't have any sort of intention or personality or anything like that.
What about unnatural selection?
Have you seen that Netflix series?
Nope.
Yeah, there was a Netflix series called Unnatural Selection.
I'm guessing genetic modifications, right?
I love the opening scene of Unnatural Selection, where there was some guy on a farm in the countryside, and the very first couple seconds of the show, was this guy jerking off a dog to collect the dog's semen, and then he takes like a container with dog semen and goes into a shed and starts looking at it underneath a microscope, and then starts like doing stuff with it. And then he was explaining, "I'm trying to get a dog to glow in the dark using a CRISPR kit I bought online." And like it was the entire series was talking about how genetic engineering is becoming something that can be done at home.
Wait, so I can make my own cat go?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to study it. Like there was this guy with only a high school education working towards getting a dog to glow in the dark, and he basically learned how to do it by watching YouTube videos.
We already have cats that glow in the dark.
Yeah.
Wait, so did he actually do it or not?
I don't think he ever did it. Like he was able to genetically modify the sperm cells to have the GFP gene, and it was actually being expressed in the sperm cells. But I don't know that he actually got I don't know why, but he never actually got like an actual dog glowing in the dark.
Well, if he did, I'm pretty sure we would have heard about it in the whole scale of science because of ethics.
Yeah, I think the ethics is probably a big factor in why he didn't do it.
Let's see. Do we have any GFP dogs yet? Let's see.
There are glow in the dark cats.
Because it's crazy to think that right now the only thing really holding back genetics is our ethics.
Yeah,
pretty much. Or else, I don't even want to know what we would have accomplished so far. And I say accomplished, none of that it's a good thing.
Okay, I just looked it up. We actually do have a transgenic puppy, but he glows green. He glows red and not green. I'm not really satisfied because I like the color green better.
Yeah, I know that with the cats, they weren't even trying to make glow in the dark cats. They were trying to test something else, like to do with medicine, and then they like they made the cat, and they're like, hey, wait, why do they glow? Oh, okay.
No, so the a lot of times the green fluorescent protein or fluorescent proteins of other colors are used as an indicator to indicate that the genetic modification was successful. And so like the fluorescence is often used as an indication that the other stuff you were trying to do also happened.
Fair.
I don't like genetics.
What are you talking about?
The classic strategy is having an antibiotic resistance gene attached to a gene for fluorescence, and also attached to the actual gene.
How does that work? How do they like attach it such that they know that if one works, the other one has? Like genetics seems like something to be so complicated. You can't just attach them and then say, oh well, the other one has to be working.
It's not like Legos.
I can explain how it's done in bacteria. I don't know how it's done in animals because I never really studied animals. I mostly studied bacteria. I can tell you how you can do it to bacteria without even using CRISPR.
Yeah, like we have some pretty dope technology in terms of modifying genetic code and even just like interacting with it. Like you have enzymes that have been printed so that way they like deconstruct the DNA of other things and then like substitute other parts out, and then it like the I can't remember what the things are that reassemble it back from RNA to DNA, but then they would just like reassemble itself, and like you just mix the two together and it just reacts and does the thing.
I mean, I could give you step-by-step instructions on how to make your shit glow in the dark.
Eat lots of glow sticks.
Well, like
you just reminded me of that video of that one dude who like fucking puts a glow stick in the microwave, then takes it out and like hasn't noticed that it hasn't popped, so he pokes it and then just pops and goes into his eyes, and the kids start screaming.
That's fucked up.
They showed that in my school during one of the like safety lab videos.
Well, that is a strange thing to show.
Yeah, I would say a safety lab video is probably like I don't think it's the best idea to make a safety lab video that makes breaking safety rules look awesome.
Well,
Getting molten like glowing shit in your eyes doesn't sound very awesome to me.
no, I think it sounds more cursed than awesome, to be honest. But I don't kink shame. I don't kink shame.
Like if this kid was using PPE, he would have been fine.
His safety is number one priority.
Tell that to Marie Curie.
Oh, too soon.
I have no idea who that is.
You don't. You know who Marie Curie is. Don't stop it. You know who she is.
Who?
Marie Curie.
Yeah, that's
No,
fake
that
news.
is-
There's no such thing as female scientists.
I have no idea who that is.
Lies.
No, she's basically like one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, who like discovered radiation or something, right?
I'm just gonna post. I'm just gonna post this. Maybe it's because of the way I'm saying it. But if
She
I say this,
discovered
you,
a radioactive element, and but because she was working on it all the time without like protective equipment, she died from that.
So Marie Curie was radioactive superwoman. There was an accident in her lab where she was studying radiation, and it gave her superpowers of cell growth.
What do you mean? And by cell growth, you mean cancer?
Yeah, yeah. So Marie Curie was the woman who basically like she advanced her understanding of atomic physics. Like she was like one of the steps in discovering like nuclear power and nuclear weapons and stuff like that. She was like basically a really renowned nuclear physicist. Like she basically like practically
at
invented
the end, she became
field
a
of
nuclear weapon.
physics. Yeah, and she ended up dying because of her discoveries because like her experiments gave her cancer.
I'm pretty sure that like you'll like see if you go look it up, if you look her up, I think you'll just be like, oh yeah, okay, I've seen her before. Pretty
Yeah,
sure.
like my dad's like a nuclear physicist, and he has this like undying love and admiration for her.
Yeah, I have no idea who that is. I looked her up.
No. Maybe it's a thing like here in my like in the schools they often talk about her, so maybe it's just because I've seen her so much. I'm like, oh yeah, you can't not know her,
Fair.
Maybe it's just it's probably a me thing. Did I ever tell you guys the story of
First
this one
woman
girl
to win a
that-
Nobel Prize twice. Damn.
Oh, dude, Marie Curie is fucking lit.
Oh, by the way, there was another woman who died of cancer because of her discoveries, and she was responsible for the discovery of DNA, the structure of DNA. I'm trying to remember who that was. Rosalind Franklin. That's what it was. So Rosalind Franklin, so basically we use X-ray crystallography to discover the structure of DNA. Rosalind Franklin actually discovered, like, it was the one who performed the lab experiments that produced the data that Watson and Crick used to determine the structure of DNA, right? And so Watson and Crick never actually performed a science experiment. They were just using the data that Rosalind Franklin generated, and Rosalind Franklin died due to radiation exposure, and she would have gotten the Nobel Prize for discovering the structure of DNA, but they don't award Nobel Prizes to dead people. You can't get a Nobel Prize posthumously, and that's basically the reason that she doesn't have a Nobel Prize. But like if you have a female biology teacher, like and they're talking about DNA, you can score points with her by talking about Rosalind Franklin. But I do think that biology tends to be one of those more female-dominated fields.
I used to think biology was dumb and gay, and then I revisited it in the last month or two, and it's actually super interesting.
Well, it's turning into an information technology. Biology maturing is a hard science these days. Back in the day, back during the 1900s or 1800s, a biologist was just some guy who walked in the forest with binoculars, cataloging birds and insects. But now it's actually turned into a hard science.
Yeah, I'm actually considering reskilling from computer science into bioinformatics.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because basically, genomics seems super cool because it's essentially like a huge multi-celled organism running all of the same code. It's like the most complex multi-threaded computer, but biological computer ever. And so programming with DNA sounds like cool shit to me.
So here's my impression of people who do bioinformatics is you're gonna have a traditional biologist who's gonna be interested in how the genes work and all that and the machinery of the cell, and then someone who does bioinformatics is just don't know, don't care, data is data, and so they see genetic sequence data and they're just oh yeah, this is data. I'm gonna treat this as data the way any other computer scientist would, right?
That's gonna be me. I'm literally gonna just genetic code. You had me at code.
Yeah, and then basically this is genetic code, and then they start describing the detailed mechanisms inside the cell, and the bioinformatics guy was like, oh yeah, I quit listening after you said code. I know how to deal with data.
Preceptrons can be used to insert code. Hell yeah, that's my in. That's my in.
Yeah.
No, what's it called? Yeah, that's what it's called, isn't it?
What's that?
Is it the? Maybe I'm thinking it's confused with someone else. It's the bit of DNA that is self-replicating and carries the other. It's Is it? And let me just double check my terms. What's it called? What's it called?
What was the question?
I know the computing equivalent, and then you can extend it, and it's got the same name as what it originally is called in genomics. So a quine in computing is a program that prints its own source code.
Okay.
And if you include other code that is not part of the reprinting or self-replicating aspect, it has a different name, and that's common in genomics. That's where the name came from. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Are you talking about mutation?
No, it's a bit of genetic code which self-replicates and also contains other instructions which are not part of the replication process.
Are you talking about transposable elements? Transposons?
Not quite. What's it called? Hang on. Bro, what's up with Discord searches? There's someone I know that I was talking about it with, and I can't find the result.
I mean, I can't read your mind and guess the word you're thinking of. It might not even be in my vocabulary.
What's it called? I'm going to find it. I wrote one in Python. Might be on my other computer though. An intron.
Oh yeah, and intron is just non-coding DNA. Like you have like introns and exons, and like an intron is going to be it's so like an exon is going to be something that codes for protein, and then an intron is going to be something that influences the coding of protein but doesn't directly code for it. I gotta look this up.
It's used in the replication of genes, as far as I'm aware.
What?
As far as I'm aware, it's used in the replication of genes.
Yeah, it is. Hold on, I gotta brush up on this.
But if I attach my arbitrary code to an intron and then manage to like hook that into the existing genetic code, then I can run arbitrary code on the cell. Going for that arbitrary code execution. Essentially, I would like to build a biological computer.
Oh, I've heard about this before. I'm a little bit skeptical. Like you're talking about getting DNA to you're trying to think of like having some sort of Turing complete mechanism inside of a living cell, right?
Yeah, essentially, because like all of the cells are running the same genetic code, and so if you can have it so that way you can influence like or control like what kind of responses a cell will have to certain inputs, you can use it to perform computations.
Yeah. So my issue with this is like in order to have a computer, you're actually going to have like some sort of read write capability, right? Where like I don't
by classical computers.
Yeah.
In the same sense that like we use classical computers to interface with quantum computers, like you like because you can have the same genetic code running on like hundreds of millions of cells. It's like a multi-threaded system, and so you have like the single-threaded classical computer like coordinating and interfacing with the super multi-threaded biological system. I think that would be super cool.
Yeah. I think that if you were to do something like this, I would think
literally a read-write head or Cas9 or whatever. One of them is like literally a read-write head.
It does recognize foreign DNA, splice it, and incorporate it into its own genome. So, yeah, I suppose so. But like if you were to try to have a biological computer, I feel like the input would have to be inserting printed DNA into the cell, and then the output would have to be lysing and killing the cells and doing shotgun sequencing in the entire thing. And so, like, I imagine if you were to try to do this, you would have to basically the input would be inserting DNA into the cell, and the output would be sequencing the DNA in the cells.
Well, I think it would be cool to combine that technology with machine learning, and then essentially have an artificial brain in some sense, and so you can program the cells to behave like neurons and be supported by other cells, and then you can program the neural structure to learn and train it on stuff.
Okay, so if you're just going to make nerve cells, right, like in a petri dish, basically performing calculations.
Yeah, but to be able to like reprogram the code of the cells so that way when they die it'll reform into like some kind of different sequence. So essentially, Like
Like to paraphrase Richard Dawkins, like it takes a team of scientists and researchers a budget of millions of dollars and several years in order to create a supercomputer, but a woman can make a even more powerful like computational machine with no research, 9 months of development, and only a little bit of help from a friend.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea.
And so like in a lot of ways, like what if we had some sort of like biological entity that was capable of performing calculations or using neurons? And I'm just like, are you describing every animal ever?
No, but that's my point. Is like rather than having, because like the brain of the animal has to be supported in some way, and that's why they have, well, even though it happened in reverse, right? Like there was cells and they got more complex, and then they developed the ability to like do stuff, and then eventually to coordinate more complex behavior they developed brains and stuff. But what if we now take it one step further, and rather than having to support all of this extra hardware to support the brain, we just directly support a brain that can be directly be reprogrammed. Like it can either be retrained with the current genetic code, or to take it one step further, you can even reprogram the cells with new genetic code to modify how it functions.
I mean, I'm down with this idea of like nerve cells in a petri dish performing calculations. That seems a little bit more plausible than trying to rather than trying to get the inside of a cell to perform calculations using DNA. Like, I probably think that like nerve cells in a petri dish might be a more practical way of trying to do this.
I got an
Well, I want to do a bit of both.
You guys, you're done.
By the way, are we being recorded right now? Because I see like 2 bots in chat.
Yes.
Yeah, that's from the debate, the event.
Don't worry.
Is it still
dude, it's for
recording?
National security.
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay.
Don't worry. National security.
But yeah, that would be cool.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
You know, I'm
Okay,
surprised
guys,
they didn't get after me for talking in the event at the end of it without actually signing up for it.
Yeah, it was, the last topic was like we didn't have an against, and so it just turned into a discussion. But yeah.
Imagine that there aren't any eugenicists who are opposed to modern medicine.
Yeah, we only had one person that wanted to do the topic in general. What was I saying? It was, oh yeah, basically, it's you know you wouldn't download a car meme.
Yeah.
Yeah, the piracy one. Yeah, in this case, it's like you wouldn't download a GPU, but what if you could?
Yeah. Okay.
just grow better hardware using better genetic code.
Can I download an internet?
You can download a faster network card. Or like download more RAM. That could legitimately be a thing.
Oh my god. Like, because you're 3D printing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a biological 3D printer that like prints basic cells, and then you can like use custom genetic code and stuff. I don't know. It'd be cool.
Do you know that DNA printers are a thing?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Thing I wanted to add. The climate change cannot be the greatest threat to human existence. If you look, for example, at COVID-19, which was, I would say, quite mild, not mild, but it wasn't too much of a harsh disease or virus or whatever. And it was extremely, out of nowhere. And we saw how people reacted in the West. Widespread panic and such.
If you didn't hear, but I said that the discrimination is not exclusive to the population. The state itself has also been historically been responsible for I think pretty much every case of the denial of marriage for anyone who is homosexual or of the wrong religion that in recorded history. I'm not aware of a single case where the general population has denied it. Perhaps in recent history, areas in like
your liberty to exercise your own privacy, then you get screwed. But I mean, if somebody sets off a bomb, then you also get screwed, and then you start asking the moral question of like, which is more important, like potentially leading to like a corrupt system of government or like death, and then you go into the weird area of morality and then trying to judge one life against the other. And the two other points that I wanted to make is to sort of introduce two more arguments, which is that like the debate about like national security